Om Shanti. So welcome once again, all Baba's dear children. Time and again Baba gives us different opportunities to uplift our progress so that we can come up to the stage where He wants us to be. And we are so lucky that Pune is blessed with so many seniors, so many dadis, including Bab Dada, that time and often we have many seniors visiting us to shower their blessings, to shower their words of wisdom, due to which we are constantly going ahead. And today, on this Sunday afternoon, I know Sunday afternoon everybody, we'd like to go to Param Dham in a different way. But all of you all, most of y'all I know, some of y'all coming from large distances just to hear Brother Dan. That shows that how much desperate we are and how much eager we are to, for self-progress. So, first of all, I will like to welcome all of you. May I request all of you all to claps for all of yours? Thank you. You don't seem to be very happy. Can I have a louder clap? Wonderful. So, we are very happy that Baba has sent Brother Dan amongst us. So I would request Dan Bhai to please come on the dais so that we all can take drishti from you. Maybe some of you all might be not aware, Brother Dan is from Australia and he's Baba's very special child. He's Baba's very special child, and it was in the October of 2001 when Baba caught him and he brought him closer. That was the time when he was doing his graduation in LLB at the Sydney University, and today afternoon I was having a chat with him that what brought him closer to Baba, because for us being a Indian background, it is easy for us to understand Shiv Baba, and we have been taught about the mythologies since the beginning. But that was not the case with Brother Dan. So he shared his wonderful story. Maybe you can share in today's class as well, but I'll just cut short that it was the experience when he did the yoga for 30 hours before the Murli class, just after he completed the course. That was the time when he got very good realizations from Shiv Baba, and those experiences helped him come closer to the yajna as well as motivated him to go faster. And thereafter he was a regular student of Baba. He completed his graduation in LLB in the year 2006, and from 2007 he was affiliated to the Association of Lawyers in Sydney, later on also in Australia. And he, in his Lokik life, he worked with a very big firm, reputed firm of lawyers in Australia for around 7 years. And after that he planned to dedicate his life for the service of Baba. So thereafter, at present he is serving at the Sydney Retreat Center, and he is Secretary of Brahma Kumaris, Australia. Brother Dan was also supposed to visit us at the time of COVID. There was a program when Charlie Bhai and Dan Bhai were coming, but due to some reasons it could not happen. But Baba wanted him to meet us, all of us. So Baba made sure that he came today also, rather this time, in spite of his busy schedule. Probably he'll be flying back to Australia in a couple of days, but we were lucky that he accepted our invitation, and we'll be soon hearing him. And a very special topic, uncovering the blind spots. I'm sure all of us must be identifying or must be finding challenging some of the blind spots which we have been carrying maybe since our childhood or maybe since the time we became Baba's child. So how to identify them and how to find victory over them, probably that is something which Brother will cover today. So without taking much more time, I would hand over to Brother Dan to advise us with his words of wisdom. Om Shanti, thank you.
Thank you, Praful Bhai. We'll test out this mic. Huh? Sorry?
Would you like to talk from the top on the stage? Maybe the sound will be better.
I don't think it will impact the sound, but I appreciate that me garage. It just feels like the stage is too high and the group is too small for me. It's like for like 100 people. Sisters, can I ask one sweet favor? Like all of these chairs, come on. You can all enjoy a comfortable sofa today. And brothers in the wooden chairs, if you want to have a sofa seat, please come forward. It just makes it a bit closer, right? Because we're only a cute small group, we can feel close and it creates a feeling. So, because we're a nice size group, I thought you can also make it interactive, we can share a bit. I was wondering, what interested you to come to listen to a talk about uncovering blind spots? Does anyone want to share, start off like, what was interesting for you about the topic? Or why did you come today? Or you just ended up getting lost and you ended up by mistake here? So it was on purpose. Anyone? Not another shy group, Dartiben? Yeah, great, please.
Sometimes we feel that I know my weaknesses, and I also know the strengths, but sometimes I don't know the weaknesses. I feel there is no weakness or there is no strength or something. We don't know. We know our weaknesses, but we don't know the times for this. We are not aware of this.
Yeah. We know our weaknesses, but maybe some we don't. And so we're interested to explore more. Cool. Anyone else? Maybe one more person? Someone from the sister side? Or
A lot of time you stand on a fine line where you are not able to make out whether left is right or right is right. And you struggle. And sometimes maybe probably you go with the crowd and make the decisions. As against that, you keep on introspecting yourself that, is this right? So I feel that fine line is a lot of time and become a blind spot.
Yeah, fantastic. Very refined answer. Yeah. Sisters, we can't let you off the hook. Who wants to go? One representative. Oh yeah, please.
Could be such a topic, uncovering the blind spots, that could be such a topic was itself a new thing for me.
So for newness you're coming. Yeah.
To be aware of the blind spots and then to remove them.
What does it mean to you to have a blind spot? What does it mean?
Yeah, that is a new concept for me itself. So the topic only was so attractive and
Okay. Very good. She also had her hands on her.
Baba wanted to be complete, right? And there are some loopholes.
Some loopholes. You should have my job. Lawyers love loopholes.
Which I wanted to cover, so I thought it can be
Yeah.
helpful.
A loophole on reaching our complete stage. I'm still looking for that loophole. Was there anyone else who wanted to share? Or was that cool? So, blind spots is such a thing. We hear in the Murli regularly about Maya, right? What is Maya? Sometimes for the English translation we say illusion, deception. Yeah? Does that resonate with how it fits in Hindi? Huh? Attraction. Yeah. Our mind gets deceived, right? So how does our mind get deceived? What is it that's attracting our mind to something which is false, a mirage, something fake? There must be some illusion, right, inside. So this is a blind spot. The whole foundation of our Brahman life actually is about blind spots. And has anyone had the experience, maybe coming to Baba, maybe in different points in your journey, where you realized something inside that you thought was good and you realized that it was bad? That there's something inside, and it's like when we have that moment of realization, then it's like, I need to change that. And it's really interesting, right, when that happens. We like that because that helps us progress. So it's like something that we had previously been blind to, our eyes got open to that. And this is the speciality of Shiv Baba, right? Bapdada. How many things does Baba keep on opening our eyes to? I mean, the list of vices, some of those I thought were virtues before Gyan. Did any of you, were you upside down like me? Those things, no. Is that a defect? Really, that also? Or even being irritated is a defect? You know, many things, it's like, they weren't even necessarily seen as bad, especially around lust. People think that everything associated to lust is like a prime quality, like society prizes that. So what is the deception inside human consciousness that could actually be poison? This is Baba's language, right? It's not fruit, it's poison. So something is wrong in human consciousness if they are valuing poison and rejecting things which are of value. So there's an illusion, a blind spot, yeah? So this is really what this whole talk is about. And at lunch, someone asked me to share a little bit about my journey. So if it's okay with you, I'll also just start by giving a 3 or 4, 5 minute introduction of myself. People. But maybe I should use the other mic, Megraj. Is it okay? Yeah, it sounds nice. Thank you. So, people have, various questions, I think, often, and feel free to ask me questions based on what I'm sharing now, because, whatever makes you curious about how someone from New Zealand comes into the Gyan and gets involved with the Brahma Kumaris, just ask questions. I was 20 years old. I was in my, I think, 3rd year of university studies. And I was just someone who was quite interested in spiritual things. I was not like a spiritual person, though. At least consciously I wasn't aware of myself in that way. Like I was materialistic in my outlook and superficial in my thinking about things. But I used to go to Hare Rama, Hare Krishna and enjoy the chanting. And at my university they used to have a cheap lunch. They were feeding, so that attracted. And that was probably the first vegetarian food I ate in my whole life. I hardly even knew what it meant to be vegetarian. When I grew up, it was agricultural, right? So New Zealand has far more sheep than human beings. I think they have back then it used to be 50 million sheep and 3 million people. So we ate the sheep and we ate the cows and everything. So those weren't, there just wasn't an option for anything else. I didn't even really hear about being vegetarian except through TV. I never met anyone from an Indian background until I came to the Brahma Kumaris. So I knew nothing about Indian culture. I hadn't heard of turmeric or coriander or chai. Didn't exist. Never heard of it. Lakshmi and Narayan? What? Meant nothing, right? So when I heard my first Murlis, it was like, what are they talking about? Didn't make sense. Complete cultural education at the same time. But I like these devotional groups, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, and they would chant, and I enjoyed that. But the thing is that they never kept quiet, and also something in me also really craved silence. And so that wasn't really for me because it never stopped. The noise of the chanting was just continuous. The Buddhists I used to go along to as well, and that was quite nice. They would chant, and this old monk would rock backwards and forwards and chant Om, and it was more peaceful, and probably Buddhism was the thing that I felt closest to before Gyan. And I also went to some meditation and yoga retreats with another Indian group called Ananda Marga.
Yeah. So just before Gyan, and that the monk who was running that, another Dada Shamitananda, he was a very special soul. He got involved in that when he was like 16 years old, and at that stage he was in his 50s, and he had something very pure about him, and I felt like I couldn't lie in front of him. You know, there was just something that didn't allow me to lie. He just had some power of his own purity. And so I felt like something good about that group as well. And I also started going to Brahma Kumaris. I used to work at McDonald's, fast food restaurant, you know, heard of McDonald's? Hopefully none of you eat there. So yeah, I worked there for 5 years, and a friend who I worked with, she had done the Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga course. And I was reading a book, Autobiography of a Yogi by Yoga Paramhans. Yeah. And she was reading the book New Beginnings, Brahma Kumaris book. So we swapped books, and I started reading that BK book. That was probably July 2001. And when I read it, I didn't like it, actually. I don't know why. It just wasn't the right time for my intellect to open up. So I read it, and most of the things I read, I was like, Because my education was very just what the Lokic world teaches. You know, I did well in science at school and biology and more intellectual things. And so I didn't believe that there was a soul, and I believed that people who believed in God were just weak people who needed something to lean on. Yeah, it's because of their own kind of weakness that they need to believe in a God. And for, you know, evolution-wise, there's no need for a God, therefore there is no God. That was sort of my thinking. And soul, I didn't didn't really agree or believe on soul either. And part of the reason, though, that I was really searching was in 2000, April 2000, my Lokic brother left the body, and that created a lot of sorrow inside. He was killed in an avalanche accident, so he was doing like an outdoor course, kayaking, mountaineering, bushwalking, hiking, those sorts of things. And he and some friends had gone up this, it's an ice scape, so you have to use the special ice boots and packs, and there were 4 of them on a rope, and there was just a small shift in the snow. It was only like that deep, the slide, 30 centimeters, but the 2 on the bottom who were lower down, they got pushed into crevasses, and then that got filled with the snow, so they suffocated. And the 2 who were just higher up, they just came across the top, and they were able to go out and, you know, get help. And so then they found the bodies and that sort of thing. So that for me was like a bit of a wake up or a shock. I had a realization that, you know, my whole life I had just been thinking about myself, and there must be more to think about than just my own selfish needs. And I also was touched that, you know, on the news there's people who have family members, people close to them, leaving the body all the time. And I don't care. You know, I just watch that news and don't care. And now I could connect personally that actually that this is happening to people, and people are experiencing sorrow in the world. And, you know, what's the meaning of life or the use of life if the sorrow is like that? And actually, when I first heard the knowledge of the soul, it disturbed me, because I got confused, like, but if he's a soul, and then that means he didn't die. Then if he didn't die, why should I feel upset? Because the person didn't die. They're a soul. So I thought, so he can't be a soul, because otherwise I wouldn't be upset. You know, so it took time to even understand attachment, right? The sorrow is from that attachment to their bodily name and form. And it's because actually I never really knew him as a spiritual being. I had a bodily human attachment relationship with that person. And because of that, I experienced so much pain and sorrow. Not because of the actual leaving the body. That transition happens for everyone, right? So that was a big thing that really pushed me to search. And I moved away a lot from my Lokic friends at that time. So when I actually came to Baba, I was already a bit distant from my friends, which was good because all we did was we went out drinking in the weekend, we smoked marijuana, we smoked cigarettes, we were just wasting our time, you know. And it was, I didn't think about it, it was just like whatever my friends did, I went along with that. And I had lost my self-respect, you know, so there wasn't like something inside that would make me feel I had the courage to stand up to my friends and say, I'm not going to do that, that's not for me. It was like, okay, if you're doing that, I'll go along with that. So when my brother left the body, passed away, then I brought some change in terms of friendships. It was like, no, I don't want to keep doing that, it doesn't make sense, and I need to think more about life. And I was going more into those spiritual groups and making some effort to remove my habits. But I didn't have the strength to stop my habits. I was quite addicted to drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. Cigarettes I managed to stop before Gyan, but the other habits I just didn't feel like I had the strength to stop them. And that was one of the things that was really magic for me coming to Baba is I think within a month just stop. And it didn't even feel like I made effort. It was like someone just turned the switch off and it dropped. So it was a bit shocking for my parents, and I didn't have much of an intellect, so I wasn't very accurate in the way I shared what was happening either. Like I remember, you know, my parents, at least they feel good, right, that he's stopping drinking and he's stopping marijuana and he's stopped smoking cigarettes, so there's something good. But I remember, and they didn't really care that I wouldn't eat their food. In Western culture it's not such a big deal, and you know, no offence to my parents, but there was no big loss in not eating what they cooked. We weren't a talented family of cooks, it was pretty bad food. You know, because that Western diet, they would just like make a steak and then steam some potatoes and mixed vegetables, and it's like there's like no flavour in that, right? It's pretty boring. So it wasn't a big deal to not eat that food. But what was a big deal was, I think, sometime within about a month of coming into Gyan, I told them that I think I can marry God and that they won't get grandchildren from me. And yeah, that was a bit like, oops. Didn't need to say that. There was already enough for them to cope with. So then my mother contacted the centre, and she had a meeting with the sister to try and, you know, work out what's going on. And I think she was worried too, because she knew that I'd been quite affected by my brother leaving the body, and so she thought, oh, he's gotten stuck in some funny spiritual thing because he's a bit sad. There was about 2 years gap, but yeah, that worked out okay. And I remember meeting with my mum, because I didn't live at home, right? Like many Western kids, you move out pretty young. So I think I moved out of home when I was 17. So by that stage, I'd already been out of the house for 3 years. So I still maintained some kind of relationship, but not that much. It was a bit weak. And so I remember when I had coffee with my mum, and she was sort of asking me, you know, what's it all about? And I remember saying to her that I'm not interested in having like a career. I had also been reading Gandhi's book, God is Truth, is it that one? His biography, autobiography? Experiments with Truth, thank you, yeah. And that book and another book that I can't remember, they both were about not owning stuff, less possessions. And you know, in Gandhi's book there was this photo of what he owned when he died, like his loincloth, his glasses, a Gita, almost nothing, right? And I was really inspired by that. I thought, this is great, like no ownership. And so I was also selling off actually the things which I had sort of owned to try and have less. I think more or less from then I've also slept on the floor, tried to live really simply, not have furniture. I sold my car. And that also made my parents more anxious, because my mother had read somewhere that before someone commits suicide, they disconnect from the world and they sell their property. So she was having this major waste thought in her mind that maybe I'm contemplating something like that. And also actually at high school I had a good friend who had attempted to commit suicide, so she was also thinking, oh, maybe because of that he's got some similar thought. So she had asked, like, how are you, what's going on and all this, and I remember saying, I'm not interested in a career, I want to own less property before I die, not more property. Society just teaches us acquire. I said I want less. So I've already got more than I want, and I want to have less. And I don't want to have a family. So I said, what's the point in me being alive? Like, what do I have? And she's a very kind person in that she really thought, and she couldn't answer, right? She's like, I don't know. Like, and based on those things, what is society offering someone? If you don't want a family, if you don't want to have like a social status, and if you don't want to acquire property, what does our community offer? And I think it was just all around that time that I also came to Baba. So I felt so good. It's like, this is what I've got to live for. This is what there is to do in life. Spirituality. There's a path actually that's open for me where I can live, explore, pursue, but not be trapped in Lokic society and that superficial worldview. And then the only thing was just changing my habits. And it was really the power Baba gave in yoga that allowed that. I remember one time in the morning before Murli, it must have been a Thursday because they had Bapdada's photo. They only put Bapdada's photo there for Thursday Borg and Sunday. Otherwise, just they would use Shiv Baba. In Western countries, there can be some confusion. If you have too much of a human image, people think it's like a guru type of thing, and there's a bit of a allergic reaction to that sort of guru thing. So I also didn't like actually, not that I didn't like Brahma Baba, but I didn't like the idea of a human form. It was very attractive that God was a being of light. I didn't like the idea of bowing down or worshipping a person. Like, what is a human being, right? There's something that's not right about that. Even when I first came to India, actually, and there's so many pictures of Brahma Baba, I was a bit like, am I in the right place? Like, who was God again? Is it the dude down here, or is it the one up there? And so in my mind I was talking to that picture. This is meditation before Murli, and it's like, why is your picture there? I don't want to see a human face. And this blue light, I don't know why it was blue, but this blue light, and I didn't know what drishti was, I had no idea, just blue lights that are coming out of the photo and coming across the whole room, and it would come in these sort of waves and just spread across the room. And then I realized that it was like coming into me, because at first I didn't realize it, and I was like, oh, and it's like, oh, that feels really good. Oh. It was just so overwhelmingly good feeling inside. And I mean, it took me time to realize that this was spiritual love. At first it's just like, feels good, I like it. But it's actually someone loves me. And it was just a love that I'd never experienced before. It's not that there was anything wrong with my parents or my siblings. It's just that love I had never felt in my life. And I remember, walking home that day, and because my little worldview was very body conscious, and I found it really hard that, like, I was asking questions in my mind like, how can this even happen? How can this exist? I don't believe this. It's not possible. And I thought, am I losing my mind? Have I used too much drugs? And what am I going to do now? And I felt like I've got to make a decision. Like, either I'm insane and I just need to take myself somewhere for mental health, or I'm just going to rethink about what my views are about life and my views about the world. Because what I think can't be right, because this, I can't explain what's happening. And so luckily I didn't sort of go into a mental institution. I went home and I just decided that I need to start approaching the Brahma Kumaris knowledge with an open mind. Because up until then I was still fighting a lot. because so many things didn't make sense. Like time being cyclic, the length of the cycle, the lack of explanation for fossils and the solar system and all that. I was like, I can't get my head around this. And also, how can everything that all these eminent professors and people at university who are teaching me, how can they be so completely wrong? And they'll stand there and they'll publish articles and they'll speak on the news about all these things, which these people are telling me are false. They can't both be right. And so that was like the dilemma in my head at the time. But I felt I've got to give this knowledge a chance, and as much as those people know things, there's also a lot of things that they don't know. And there's a lot of things which they used to believe were true 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Scientifically, they thought it was true, and today they've rejected it, right? And they're not even accountable for that. They just keep on changing what the truth is. And so it's like, well, what they think now can also change. They may say that this is the truth now, but it can change, because they're always making assumptions about what that truth is. And so I'm not going to go with their truth anymore, because it will just change, and it will keep on changing. And so, yeah, this is more or less my journey, how I came to Brahma Kumaris and how I got involved. Any questions on your side, actually, before we move on to the PowerPoint? I'm just getting a little bit blinded, so I'm going to... yeah, blind spots. How's your chance if there was a question? If there's no question, that's great. First Baba Milan experience. It's a beautiful question. Hey, the first experience meeting Avyakt Bapdada was definitely also very profound for me. December 31st, 2002 was the first Avyakt Murli I was present for, and even before the Murli started, it was very emotional. There was this total excitement inside that God has come and I'm going to meet God. And even before I had come to Madhavan, when I had been in the centre, the Avyakt meeting back in 2002, there was no image broadcast, but we could listen. And so in New Zealand it was 1:30 in the morning, I think. 1:30, or maybe it was 2:30 in the morning. 2:30 in the morning. The Indian time translation, it's 7.5 hours different. And so I'd wake up at 2 o'clock and go to the centre for the Murli at 2:30 in the morning. And I used to feel it when Baba came. The songs and the music, it would just be like as if I was tuned into that vibration, and I would feel just this energy descend, and all of a sudden there's this power washing over me. And I can't physically see anything, but the inside feeling is like, I know Bapdada just came. He's just landed from up there, down here. He's in India, I'm in New Zealand, down here on this globe, right? But the feeling and just that energy, and what he was saying, it was just like it made so much sense. And this Avyakt Murli was so much easier to grasp than the Sakar Murli for me. The Sakar Murli, I found it really hard for a couple of years, because it's very it's a cultural package, right? There's so many things that I don't relate to. I don't know anything about the Ganges. I don't know anything about bhakti. I don't know anything about deities. I've heard of Hinduism, but I've never heard of a single one of the different deities in my life. So that, the Sakar Murli was harder, but the Avyakt Murli was very accessible, very good. One funny story, because I used to be, I think probably like at that stage, because I'd withdrawn from my friends and was just coming into Gyan. I was a bit of a sannyasi and selling all of my stuff. I also used to just wear my bare feet, no shoes. So I would walk to the centre just in my bare feet and enter my university classes and everything in bare feet. And one time the police, because they just drive around to check everything safe, right? So it was 3:30 in the morning. I was going to the centre for Amrit Vela, and I'm walking there in my t-shirt and my shorts and my bare feet, and they stopped me. What are you doing? I'm going into the meditation centre. They really looked at me. They're like, what's the address? And then they dropped me there, and they gave me a ride. But I could see as I walked up the stairs, they were watching that, does someone open the door? Is he telling the truth? So, yeah, that was always good. So anyway, any other questions? Ready for blind spots? So deception, and it's what we can't see, and it's like a metaphor for something which happens in the physical world, right? That, in your car, I don't know if those who've learnt to drive, you have to look over your shoulder, right, when you change lanes. If you just rely on that side mirror, these days there's a sensor and all that, right? This is 10 years ago, before the technology. You had to check over your shoulder, right? Otherwise you could change lanes into someone, because that mirror doesn't show it. So it's like a blind spot. And if you don't know that blind spot's not there, you can have an accident. And so in the same way, my personality can have blind spots. And if I don't know that there's that gap in my personality, I can crash into people, right? So what are the different ways that we crash into people in relationships? Those are our blind spots, spiritually speaking. And what you can't see can hurt you, and it can hurt others. So because of these blind spots, we can cause sorrow for ourselves and cause sorrow for others. And I hope you can read from where you are. This is just a quote from Avyak Bapdada, because sometimes people are like, why doesn't Baba talk about blind spots? But actually he talks about them heaps. And there were so many points in today's Murli about blind spots. Today Bapdada talked about how we'll justify something as right, something that's wrong as being right. Why would we do that? There's a blind spot operating, right? And Baba's bringing our attention to that. So the power of realization brings about easy transformation for all time. In the same way, unless you also have the power of realization in self-transformation, there cannot be elevated transformation for all time. In this, the realization of two things in particular is needed. The realization of your weaknesses, and the realization of the situation and the desires and feelings in the minds of those who become instrumental for that situation, the weaknesses of that person due to being under an external influence. So this is back in 87. So Baba also encourages us from time to time to think about where these gaps are in our awareness. And I'll do another quote at the end, but Baba also tells us not to dwell on it too much, right? Because we don't want to go too much into our weaknesses, but some realization should be there. Okay. This is just manmat. This isn't Baba's thing, but I found it a useful way for myself just to think about the Sato, Rajo and Tamo stages. So here I've said Sato Pradhan is someone with no blind spots at all, completely transparent, self-aware, angelic, but Saman. Sato, there's still some small defects and limitations, but I have a lot of awareness around what my limitations are, and I embrace tests, storms, feedback as an opportunity to change. Now, more of a middling Rajo stage, I have defects and limitations, but limited awareness about my defects and limitations. Starting to manage receiving feedback and tests better. Then Tamo stage, defects and limitations, but unable to face them. I get upset with any feedback, and if anyone points out my defects or mistakes, I go into low self-esteem, or I lie about it, or I have to justify myself. And then Tamo Pradhan, fully blind, no self-awareness. I only blame others and circumstances. I have a very distorted self-perception, like how I see myself has no relationship to reality at all. I've just, I'm totally off off the planet. And it's like that fake resume. You know, on our resumes we always lie about how good we are, right? Because we want to get the job. It's like where someone just, their resume is like insanely good and they're completely useless. It's like that gap is huge. And completely stone intellect. So, you know, I was fully qualified in this category when I came to Baba. That was 100% my nature and character. So it's like a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, it's like knowledgeful, fully enlightened, fully conscious, Sato Pradhan. The third eye is fully opened, completely aware being. And on the other extreme, ignorant, darkness, fully unconscious, Tamo Pradhan, no self-awareness. Third eye is completely shut down. And we all can, you know, we're all somewhere in that spectrum. Neither of us are at either end, right? Brahma Baba's at one end, and, you know, Ravan is at the other end. And then some analogies to help us understand more about blind spots. We've got like a video which I'll ask Megraj to play. And the video actually just shows different optical illusions, but it's interesting to see how even our physical eyes can be completely deceived. So if even my physical eyes can't be trusted, I mean, how can I really trust and be overly confident in my perception of myself and my perception of events and what's going on? Even the eyes aren't trustworthy. So if you guys can play the video, that would be great. So you might have seen that basically they just have found ways that your brain can't cope with processing certain visual information, and so it creates this sense of an illusion. I'm looking at something, but we think it's one thing and it's something else. And actually our brain has been filling in data without us realizing it. Another simple one for that, I'll just... In our own eye, there's an area where the optic nerve connects into the retina of the eyeball at the back. And the way your eyeball works is that it has light receptors in it. But there's one section at the back of the eye where that nerve has to connect in, there's a gap in the receptors where that has to plug in. And so if you put a dot on a piece of blank paper and you hold it around here, you don't look directly at it, but you just use your peripheral vision and you move it in and out, you will reach a point where the dot disappears. The dot was always there, but what you've worked out is that actual point where there's no light receptors in the back of your eyeball, you've hit that point holding the piece of paper. And what your brain does is it fills in what's there based on the surrounding information. The surrounding information is all white, and so it whites out the dot. The dot disappears. In your perception, the dot is gone. In reality, the dot is there. And the reason for it is because this is where the optic nerve connects into the back of the eyeball. So even in my own visual field, where I'm looking at all of you now, my brain is constantly filling in 2 points of missing data in this room, and same for each of us. All of us are making up information about what we see in front of us right now, and our brain does it automatically, it's unconscious. That's a blind spot. So imagine what our capacity is for Maya, right? How good could we be at lying and deceiving ourselves spiritually about our blind spots, how we can project out and blame other people for things when it couldn't even be my own stuff, right? I once had a situation where someone was convinced that I was really angry, and I felt no anger at all. And that sister had heaps of anger, and she was, she got angry about lots of things. But her conviction that I was angry was based on her sanskar. Yeah. She saw the world through an angry lens. She felt that other people were angry, and that's why she got angry. Actually, she didn't own her own stuff. It was her anger. So this is this idea of projection, and it makes this whole thing of spirituality very interesting. Now, there's a lot of room for misunderstanding, a lot of need for compassion for each other, flexibility with each other, a lot of room to try and openly discuss misunderstandings, because there's so much margin for us to misunderstand each other. And so this one I already explained. And so in our inner world, it's the way that each of us exists in the own sphere that we're observing and perceiving in. And so we create like a distortion around us. I am the distortion in my ability to observe my own social environment. Does it make sense? The world that I see is distorted by me. My experience, how I grew up. For example, there can be very strong cultural norms about respect. In certain cultures, certain things should always be done a certain way because that means respect. But I just come as an innocent dope from another culture and I do the wrong thing. Did it mean I was being disrespectful? It didn't. And often people have that compassion when it's someone from another culture because they realize, oh, that person's got no idea, right? I used to go to some thing. What did I do? It was like an Nandamaga or some devotional thing that I had just started going to before Gyan. And I stuck my feet out in the room, like I can't sit cross-legged for very long, so I just stuck my feet out, pointing them at the guru. Didn't mean anything to me, but they're like, you can't do that. I can't do what? You disrespect. What? I don't mean, it's like, oh, okay. It's culturally driven, right? But there's just a misunderstanding. But it's according to the way we perceive things ourselves. Or, another example, if you know this English expression, someone's got a chip on their shoulder. Before Gyan, I had a chip on my shoulder against the police, actually, because I drove a really cheap car, and even when I was 20, I looked about 12 years old. When I first had to go to the law courts, when I was working, maybe I was 28, and they thought I was a high school student, that's like 16-year-old going for work experience. I just was never able to kind of grow up. And so when the police saw like this little 12-year-old driving a really old, trashy car, they would always pull me over. I got stopped so many times in my home. It wasn't possible. If I saw a police car, they would turn around and stop me and do the breath test and all that. I never got done for drink driving. I was never drinking while driving. But I had a resentment because of this. So it was like I was carrying this dislike, prejudice towards all police just because of this. So, people have a gripe. Some people don't like lawyers. Don't know why, right? But all different things that people have some prejudice about, and they carry that with them. It might be because they've been hurt about something in their life. Good one, right? India and the British. My God. Talk about a chip on your shoulder as a nation, right? I'm born in New Zealand, and I was in Delhi, and some little boy said to me, "Britisher, go home." I'm from New Zealand. But there's these things which we just are prejudices, and it's not necessarily good or bad, it just is what it is, right? But it's according to our perception, our worldview, what we think about things, our assumptions. So our distortion. So this is about learning my limits so that I can try and improve myself. And no one's got no blind spots, right? Except for a few of our avyakt angelic family members. And it's also about learning to accept the limits of others. But don't think we can improve people unless they've consented as well. So I'm always concerned that someone might, go, "Oh yes, I learned about blind spots, and I just want to tell you you've got this blind spot." If he says, "I want to talk about it," it's a different thing, right? They should consent. It's not that we're trying to help others, it's for self-realization. So some common blind spots. And I've written, it's different facets of a diamond, that all the blind spots are actually kind of linked to each other. In the same way that all the virtues are connected to each other. Without purity, you can't have true happiness and true love. The defects are also, Bhakti also says in the Murli, the defects are networked with each other. So all of these are interlinked. So one blind spot, I already know. And this is that type of blind spot. I worked with a guy, and I had to supervise him and train him. And so naturally I have to educate, right? And as soon as I would try and tell him something, he'd be like, yeah, I already know. Yeah. I'm like, I haven't finished. I've hardly started. I know, yeah. Oh, okay. And it was just his reaction. Maybe he was taught that it was wrong to kind of show that you don't know something, so you just have to pretend that you know. But then it was a barrier for him to learn, because it would be like this block would come up every time I had to try and explain something I already know. And sometimes we can be like this with the Murli as well, right? Yeah, I heard this before, I already know that, Baba. Baba's like, I'm not repeating it for no reason, kids. It's like, so then we're not able to learn, it becomes a block in our learning. And maybe someone's repeating themselves because I haven't listened in a way that makes them feel understood. I can't remember actually why I wrote that point, so if it's okay, I'll just skip it. So this is another common blind spot. And this one is so tricky. I'm right. Now, does anyone do something because they think it's wrong? We don't, right? I don't proceed with something because I want to do something that's stupid or wrong. I do it because I think it's right. But I could be in a group of people and the other 3 people all think they're right. Uh-oh. All 4 can't be right. So how do you manage that? So then we can have these difference of opinions, conflict. Don't you think if I were wrong, I'd know about it? This is sort of a grossly egoistic statement, right? I think traffic control is just playing. So this, the way I am right becomes a defect is when it gets sort of filled with ego or arrogance takes it over. Of course we try and move forward based on something being accurate, based on it being correct. But we also have to keep an open mind. When I become fixated that my position is like the only option, the only position, you can feel when someone's like that, there's a rigidity there, there's a vibe behind it. And we can also get ourselves in this trap. So we often use the external circumstance to justify it as well. Like, no, but I am right. See, look what happened. I'm right because it happened the way I said. But actually, even if you are right, you can still be arrogant about being right, no? have to show that I'm right, prove that I'm right, rub it in someone else's face that what I said was going to be the way is the way. All of those are signs that actually I was not being humble in being right. You can be right and humble, and you can be right and damn arrogant, and that's the difference. So some checking points for whether I'm under the influence of I am right. Do I listen to others? If I don't listen to others, because someone who deeply believes they're right won't waste their time listening to other people, will they? Why would I bother listening to you because you're all wrong and I'm right? It's totally a waste of my time. I'm right, so no point listening to you. So if I've got a problem listening to others, there's a good chance that I've got this. Do I need to prove myself? If I can't just let things go and past be past, I have to really kind of like prove it, then this is my problem. Am I forceful with my ideas? How do I integrate my ideas with others? I get forceful if I think I'm right. Whereas if I understand that someone else might also be right, or that someone else has just got a different perspective, and I need to consider that, it creates humility. And do I beat myself up if I get something wrong? Because if I have this sort of attachment to needing to always be right, I won't cope when I'm not. And that's a real big red flag that I can wave. If I can't cope with openly saying to someone, yeah, sorry, that's my mistake, I thought this, but I'm wrong. I need to own it. If I can't, it's because of this subtle ego influencing my decisions. I think I'm always right, and I don't like to ever acknowledge being wrong. Need to acknowledge it. And actually by being wrong, that's how we learn, no? Otherwise, how do we learn and grow? So, next blind spot, it's your fault. So blaming others or situations, sometimes we might justify it because that's the reasonable assessment of the facts, It is the case that it's someone else's fault. But it's also very disempowering for me if I look at things like that. Because if it's always someone else's fault, I can't do anything about it. Whereas if I feel that I still have some responsibility, at least there's something I can work on. Whereas if I'm blaming, then I'm actually subtly making myself like the victim. Yeah? If it's your fault, I'm the victim. And as a victim, I'm in a powerless or weak position. And it's like a mental positioning. I personally feel it's very similar to what Bapta was talking about this morning in the Murli. Do you remember he was saying what form that we would take when we would go in front of Baba? He says, you're the children who have all powers. And then we do what? What did he call us this morning? He had a sweet title for us. Gyani Bhakta. Yeah, and Royal Bhakta. It's like, inside we take this position that it's not our fault and that it's everything else's fault and I'm the victim of these circumstances. So we go in front of Baba in that begging sort of way, not in self-respect. So similar sort of thing. And responsibility is my ability to respond to a situation. So to stay focused on a solution. If I get into the blame game, then I really remove my ability to respond well to a situation. I disempower myself. I make myself weak. Whereas if I actually have this attitude, not that I'm at fault, but I'm responsible. And I don't need to put other people at fault because they're my family. And what responsibility can I take to help improve the situation? And focusing on the past leads to paralysis. If we get into this fault analysis, trying to work out who's to blame, and no one wants to be blamed, right? So you get this kind of edgy game where everyone's trying to avoid being the person who gets the can. But I feel that responsibility shifts me out of that. It's not about blame, it's just about own it and be responsible, and then how can we move forward? Blame looks into the past, responsibility looks into the future. Blame looks to the problem, responsibility looks to the solution. okay, what's happened has happened, past is past, how do we fix it? Got to move there. And the amount of time it takes us to get from problem to solution is, in a sense, how jnani the soul is. I worked with Lokik people in my professional life, and people would take years to get from out of fault into responsibility and solution. Years. Because without gyan, how do you do it, right? You're just crippled in these feelings of blaming people, and they can't get out of it. And so, even as their lawyer trying to suggest that this is the solution, this is how we try and move your case forward, this is what you need to do, some people just won't do it. Because even for their legal problem, because it represents an emotional problem as well, they don't actually want to get a solution. They're not ready yet emotionally to move to the solution, so they just go round and round and round and blame. So it's a huge blind spot. Number 4, lawyer for the self and judge for others. So this is a blind spot about how we're not equal in the way we treat ourselves and treat others. So, when we talk about this lawyer judge, it means a lawyer is the one who builds a case full of excuses. Yeah? So for ourselves, we can build the case full of excuses. Oh, why was I late for Murli today? Or why did I not do this? Oh no, it wasn't my fault. I had a really busy night. I was doing so much service for Baba, whatever it might be, And then someone else walks in 1 minute late. Oh, Darty, you didn't come. What are you doing, Darty? For myself, all these excuses. As soon as someone else does it, I'm like, oh, judgmental. Doesn't make sense, right? Why should I be treated so differently from other people? I do it because of my own distortion or bias around myself, right? Actually, if I'm fear-minded, what Baba encouraged us to do is actually be the lawyer for others and the judge for myself. Oh, Darty's 1 minute late. Oh, she had a really busy night. She had so much service to do. My poor thing. So, that way we're trying to create a positive case for them. Another popular term in the West is we call it generous assumptions. I can't remember, there is some psychologist who sort of advocates this terminology. The assumptions we make about other people should be generous-hearted. Not small-hearted that because of this they've done this and, seeing it as a negative way, but what's happened in their life that hasn't allowed them to do what they would like to do. I've got a kind assumption about what it is. So otherwise it's a blind spot in that I'm not treating things equally. Clear? So we want to become a lawyer for ourselves. Oopsie. And, become a lawyer for others and a judge for ourselves. Double standard. Another part of this is that we judge others by their behaviour and their outcomes, and yet we expect them to judge us by our intentions. For ourselves, we know what's going on inside, so we base it based on that. Others, we often don't inquire. We just see, say, in a Lokik work environment, there's deliverables. Someone didn't deliver on what they're supposed to deliver on, therefore, I'm upset. And even in a professional relationship, things haven't been achieved, certain outcomes weren't achieved. But we need to inquire why. What was happening? What's the reasons behind it? That's what we do for ourselves. So we should extend the same grace or generosity to others. What is the reason? Scratch in behind that. And that will remove the blind spot or level things up. And then labels and prejudice. Even though we're soul conscious, Baba's children, we're still quite good at this one as well. So we often tag people and then treat them according to the tag. There's this cool game that we could have played in another time. When I come next time, we can play it. In this game, what you do is you get 2 groups of people and you get them to wear a hat. And on the hat is a label. And in the first round of the game, the labels are all something negative. Don't trust this person. This person, don't take them seriously. This person is hopeless, very disorganized, etc., etc. Some negative attribute. And the only rule in the game is the group has to have like a meeting and they must interact with each other as if that label is true. That's the only rule. And then you just make up whatever the meeting is. You know, the meeting's about, I don't know, the bullet train from Mumbai to Ahmedabad and why is it delayed? You know, whatever. And then they have to discuss that and make up what they're discussing. But they must interact with each other as if that label is true. And within a few minutes, that meeting, the vibes, BK or non-BK, doesn't matter. It becomes a bit tense. Because people don't like being treated based on such a miserable label, right? The person wearing the hat doesn't know, so that's half the fun. Yeah, that's why it's on their forehead. They've got no idea what's on their forehead. And you know, some person's trying to be sincere and sensible when their hat says, don't trust this person. So then the rest of the group is like, oh, no. You know, like they're trying to make these suggestions and everyone's just like, oh. It's very funny to see how people respond, right? And then at the end of the game, you get people to try and guess what was on their hat. And probably about 80% accurate, the guesses. People can get it. Or they'll say, I just couldn't understand why, but everyone just laughed when I spoke, and their hat says something like, you're just ridiculous, you know, like no one takes you seriously. And so they work it out why, you know, people are responding a certain way to them. And that's like the label that people have put on them. And so it's really a checking point for if I label someone, and then if I communicate that label to someone else, gossip, right? That's all gossip is. How much does that start to create an atmosphere where everyone thinks that that person is like that? And I can also create a different gossip, right? I can create the gossip that this person is like an angel. They are so beautiful. They are so sweet. And then I can gossip that. And then everyone relates to them like that. And then they feel happy because they can feel that this is how everyone's vision on them is. Yeah? And so the second round of the game is the same meeting, same group, but you put positive labels on their head. This person's very organized. This person's very kind. This person's very trustworthy. And then they meet. And the whole meeting is totally different. They start to move towards creating something. The previous meeting, they couldn't create anything. It just got disruptive. And so you can see how, based on the sort of inner label that we put on people, it creates a vibration, and actually they do pick it up. It's not hidden, and we have to check ourselves. But one of the really nice things about this blind spot is that it's not necessarily an entirely bad blind spot. Actually, it can be very good to do this there, because actually there's some benefit in labeling people. You know, in the world, if you say that you want to be prejudiced, people think, oh no, don't have any prejudice. But actually, I feel that in the Brahma Kumaris, you're trying to learn to become the most prejudiced person in the world. Bab Dada is so prejudiced. He has already prejudged all of us as being far more beautiful and powerful and, you know, than we ever even imagined ourselves, right? So he's prejudged in that way. So prejudice can be good. It just needs to be a positive prejudice, that we have a fixed good vision on people, that we're determined that even if this person behaves in a certain way, I am certain that they're a peaceful soul. I am certain that they're a loving person. You know, as a child, they were sweet and innocent. Whatever has happened in their journey may have changed that, but as a child, you know, there was that in them, and it's still inside them. Whatever I churn to create that type of prejudice, right? This is then identifying our different blind spots. And do you see do you see two faces there? One is a profile, and the other is someone looking straight forward. Everyone sees both faces, one side on, one front on. So Baba often says in the Sakar Murli, right? Look in the mirror of your own heart, am I worthy to marry Sri Lakshmi? That's just that checking point. Look inside and compare myself to something elevated and see what is in me that is in the way of me reaching that. That is my own transformation, to change my blind spots, to remove my weaknesses. And this we mentioned earlier. You know, it's not about other people, it's about myself, and actually sometimes people's blind spots are very deeply rooted in, something that they're not ready to look at. So it may not even be helpful to confront someone. If it's connected to some, childhood memory of pain or something like that, they might even be trying to change it. Just telling them about it isn't going to help them. It may disturb them. And some red flags and alarm bells for blind spots. Waste and negative thoughts. This is the main driver of waste and negative thoughts. It's like an energy smokescreen that comes across that is trying to cover up something inside me that I don't want to look at. And that's the role of them, actually. Waste thoughts will always be about something external, right? But what is it in me? That is the question about this. So people and circumstances are a mirror for me to check myself. And do I keep attracting the same issues? Externally I might solve something, but then the same problem comes back into my life in a different form because I didn't actually solve it. I'm just caught in this cycle. The example I'm referring to here is domestic violence. This presentation was originally for a non-BK audience, and so I would use the example from my work about clients who are in violent relationships. They get out of that relationship, you get court orders, the other person, there's an apprehended violence order against them, they may even go to jail, and then the client ends up in a relationship with the same sort of person again and again. So yes, of course violence is bad and that sort of thing, but also we need to look at ourselves and see, are there reasons why certain things perpetuate or keep repeating in my life? Because there might be something I'm not conscious of which is causing it to repeat. How am I attracting certain things into my life? For example, if I deeply believe that I'm unworthy, that I'm a bad person, I will attract into my life hardships that match my deep beliefs about myself. Yeah. We want to, unfortunately, one of the things with human beings is we want to confirm our own beliefs, even if they're unhelpful beliefs about ourselves. We still try and confirm our own reality. As souls, we want to feel that I'm right. So we look for evidence that confirms that. So other strategies for removing my blind spots, becoming aware of them. Determination, my own determination to actually overcome it. The courage to listen to feedback. I personally have gained so much in my spiritual journey from other people giving me feedback and even inviting feedback from people to try and help me. When I left Melbourne and moved to Sydney, I had the chance to meet the BK family, and I asked everyone to write down one thing that I should keep doing in Sydney that they like, and one thing that they feel I should stop doing. Because I felt like, what's the point? I've got this chance. These people have known me for 10 years, so I can try and get some tips from them about what they feel I should change if I'm going somewhere else. And if I'm going somewhere else, it's a chance for me to try and make that transformation. What is it that they're seeing? And it was really helpful. Some people would just write things too, like, oh, don't change anything, you're just great. Which is sweet, but it's not helpful actually, because I really wanted to get their honest feedback about what they had seen. And some people wrote really helpful things, were like, someone wrote that I joke far too much and I should take some things more seriously, which is true. And I've been looking at that, ongoing. So yeah, lots of good feedback. I'm the main benefactor. If I start to see the fuller picture of myself, I'll have less car crashes in my social interactions with others. And another massive thing is people who I can trust to be straight with me. And, that they'll share things, but they're not saying it with resentment or ill feeling towards me. Just honestly, they're saying, please don't do this, or that type of thing. And there was a cool Baptara quote about that too. So when seeing the weaknesses or defects of anyone, one who uplifts others will see that defect with good wishes and feelings of cooperation, and will donate power to make that soul virtuous. So sweet, huh? So it's like, even I become aware of people's blind spots, but this is my shrimat from Baba, how we should respond. Okay, they're under that influence, give sakash, have pure feelings for them to have some transformation. Not that I judge people or have any negative feeling. And lastly, I just thought it's important to balance things out. Baba also tells us not to think too much about our weaknesses. The only thing with blind spots, right, it's a bit of a defects talk. It's like defect, 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 defect. So it's not to try and reduce our self-esteem. It's actually to try and help us. And so not to dwell too much on our weaknesses. The main thing actually is always to keep focusing on our specialities and the specialities of the Brahmin family. To keep growing those. That end. Q&A. Does anyone want to ask anything? Or you can share something as well, make a comment, give your opinion about something, you're welcome. Oh look, you've come for a question, please. So Nikki's saying that sometimes I had written that people and situations can be a mirror. Yeah? And so then what's the question? Yeah. Okay, so I'm getting a mirror and I'm feeling that there must be something not right, but I can't pick out exactly what the weakness is. How do I kind of pinpoint that? This is I feel, the process of our own introspection. At least the awareness is there, like as in you're open to looking into that mirror and you're thinking about it, and that will start it. For me, many of the things which I've seen in myself, it starts like this, and then we maybe see it in another circumstance, and it happens again, and each time we get a little bit more awareness about it. And then eventually we get to the point where the realization is fuller, and then the transformation also happens. One of the interesting things about defects is that when there is a deep realization about it, that often finishes the defect, right? When I only partially see it, or I'm not quite sure, or it's just an uncomfortable feeling, the thing continues. But when I really see in myself that this is what I'm doing, this is how it's perpetuating, that light bulb moment happens, usually it finishes quite quickly after that, because I had that realization. But the pinpointing takes time, and it's only just checking myself, and those circumstances will keep coming up anyway, so whether it's a curse or a blessing, I think that's what happens, right? Until their fuller realization comes, it will repeat, and then one day the aha will come.
How would we generally handle the situation of being a victim? Because in professional life, you do come across a situation wherein there's no fault of yours, and straight you understand that, okay, you are at a losing end. So, is it something that to look at it as a drama and put the bindi and move forward, or is it something like when you put the bindi and correct the things, those are coming forward and move forward? I mean, your view on this.
Yeah, happy to share my view on that. It's a really good question, right? It's like, I may not consider myself to be a victim, but often things do happen and I'm the loser of it, in the sense that there's a tangible loss. I actually have had a reduction.
And in fact, it very recently happened with me.
Oh, okay, hopefully it's not going to be too raw, fresh. Yeah. For me, it's like, if I'm holding on to the position emotionally, internally of being a victim, then I'll struggle to start to move to the solution. I'll struggle to actually start to think about how can I respond to this. And I'll get caught in the waste thoughts of, why have they done this? Why has this happened? Why has it happened to me? They shouldn't have behaved like this. That type of thought will come. It's like that thought is actually coming from the fact that I can't accept what's happened. So I have to accept that drama is accurate. This has happened. If I'm at a loss, it's just my karma, right? It's a karmic account. Someone stole something from me. Finish. It's gone. It's a karma. But then how do I respond to that sort of thing? That's my choice then. Doesn't mean that, like, if it's a relationship thing, then sometimes it will change the relationship with a person because there's been a breach of trust or there's been something else like that. So the relationship's going to permanently change with that soul because of their behavior. If it's just a circumstance thing, I have to think, okay, what can I do about it? Accepting completely what's happened. Now what can I do? Because I have to move forward from reality. I can't move forward from non-acceptance of what happened. That won't work. I'm trying to move forward, but I keep on getting pulled back to the fact that I haven't accepted that this is what happened. And the thing that stops me accepting it is because inside I feel a victim. Actually, I want to feel empowered. And it is, I mean, in a sense, you did give your answer. Karma, drama. How much can I push that full stop down to move forward? Because if I've, discriminated, there's nothing else I can do. I can't change it. I just have to accept it and then start making decisions how to move forward.
But sometimes in professional life you do have an option to, challenge people legally, because it has got a very strong legal implications. Yeah. I mean, when you are into business and then just 10-15 days back I was in a situation wherein one of our trusted supplier, which is supposed to be a multinational company, and they have been supplying us a substandard material since last 3 years. Whereas their data sheet and something was saying something else. And we trusted them, and we have been always submitting those data sheets to our customers. And because of some incidents, I was deep down there involved into the dispatches, and when the things came out late in the evening by 8:30 in front of me, I was absolutely into shock. And now the situation is tricky because I have my customers, here is a supplier, and I'm being a contractor, I have to handle whole situation. And then I'm asking Baba, what is this? And why this has to come in front of me? And I was absolutely in shock for 2 days. That how do I handle this? Because, one part is, I challenge them legally and I take them to the court of law and then screw them, their happiness as well. But then, is it going to serve the purpose? But still I have to remain in the business and I have no other supplier. Or otherwise I have to import it. So how do I do that? And it took me my whole thought process, my looking at the things again, and I could come to a conclusion that, this is a drama and probably there is a kalyan in this. So I think that's the way I tried to handle it. I'm still handling it.
That's beautiful, right? And I think that's how Baba teaches us to handle it, is that faith that some kalyan is in it. And, often the kalyan doesn't come straight away, right? It takes time to see the benefit. That's okay. And that's because it's hidden, but it will come. Anyone else want to share anything? Ask it. I mean, for me, Sakash is more to do with someone who's having a challenging circumstance. I mean, here the situation I think is more like I need to also be detached and pull myself out from it, and then I still might need to take some type of action, because if people have done something which is illegal, then I may need to do something. But how much I boil inside, that's the bit I have to regulate, right? Because if I can respond coolly with a level head, then I'm on the spiritual path. Whereas Sakash, like, who are you going to give Sakash to, right? It's like, It's
But here in this situation, I would say that definitely Baba's Gyan helps you and you steer through the situation, absolutely. I mean, the same supplier, I caught hold of them, I made them to change the material, asked them to supply the material what they have written in the data sheet, at the same price what they are otherwise getting. So I pushed them. So here actually I could implement that Gyan at a locking level.
practical, yeah. Nice. Anyone else? Thoughts, questions? Praful.
Sometimes we are able to identify blind spots of others which they don't, and we want to communicate that to them. But sometimes that becomes tricky because the other person should not feel bad. At the same time, it is important because that blind spot is causing hindrances in the service. Hindrances in that person. So how do we deal with such situations? Do you have any experience in how you communicated that to that person, or you just left it on Baba? So what are your views on that?
Yeah, it totally depends on the person. I've got both types of experience in the sense that there's some experience of successful interactions with people where they were open to feedback. And in my opinion, the other person needs to consent to the conversation, otherwise there's no point. So, like Prafulbai, if you want to approach someone, then you can ask and openly say, I want to have a conversation about what's happened, and do you give me permission to give feedback, because there's some things that I want to mention. And if they say no, then you have to respect it. A lot of people do say yes, and it's like a mutual learning. But if someone's not consenting, what will happen in the conversation is, for your feedback, they will give you 10 points on what they think's wrong with you. And then it becomes like this tennis atmosphere, like for each strike they want to strike one back, and it gets nowhere. Neither do they have any realization, nor will you feel good about the interaction, because their consent wasn't there. But if people are consenting, willing to talk, then you can have really interesting and open conversations where people say, oh no, well, what about this? But we ourselves need to be ready to hear feedback if we want to give feedback, because for sure it's connected, right? If there's a tension or a difficulty, it's not going to be just me having a difficulty, they'll also be having a difficulty with me 99% of the time. And am I ready to hear what they might want to share with me as well? See if they're ready. And sometimes it can be, my experience is that actually it can build a deeper emotional, I would call emotional intimacy with that person, where there's a high level of trust, because there's an exchange on that level with each other. If you think about early days of the yajna, what did they do? Baba used to hold court, right? And in front of everyone, people would openly share about people's challenges. And I feel that's because there was such a tight community and there was such a high level of trust amongst each other that they could do that. And it must have made them pinch inside, right? You can imagine it would have, in front of Mama and Baba they're saying this. But people would work on that, and we saw what type of souls came out of the early days of the yajna, because they had that kind of deep trust and rapport with each other. Yeah. No problem. It was a great question. Any other comments, or anyone want to share anything?
You have been also started your spiritual journey at the age of 20, right? So you have been experiencing some difference, like the other colleagues and between you. Obviously you are special, right? So any obstacles, or like people are rigid, and when we come into the spiritual journey, we have the intoxication, like no one should be unaware of the God, right? And we are like everyone should know the knowledge and all. As you said today also, we have to be respectful, like they have their own perceptions and all. But like Baba says, like कोई भी उल्हाना नहीं देना चाहिए, no excuses should be come to you. So how you handle that situation? Like, you have to give the knowledge, and so yeah, obstacles are also coming. They are rigid with their perceptions, and you are treated very differently as you are on a spiritual path. So yes.
I think probably everyone can relate to this question, right? At some point in everyone's spiritual journey, we've had to approach and go through these types of things, especially if we work logically or professionally, because people come to know our habits and why our lifestyle is different and all of that. One thing is, I feel that service isn't really giving gyan. If you look at the way the Murlis have gone over time, in Sakar days, Baba's strong emphasis was to give Baba's introduction. When Baba became Avyakt, there's a lot more emphasis on dharana and behavior. So yes, we have to share Baba's knowledge, but more important than sharing knowledge is, do people get some feeling from me, my respect, my good manners, the way I interact with them, that they feel there is something divine or different? So that's the main service. More important than sharing knowledge or sharing what I do is that there's something in me that would make people ask, oh, who are you? What do you do? Oh, you meditate, tell me more, because they're interested. There's something that you've revealed through that. Because if I give lots of knowledge but it doesn't match my behavior, that can become a disservice. Yeah, like I'm just like boom, 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 and giving gyan. And the people, I haven't felt the pulse, I haven't checked if they're interested. And Baba specifically says, a scorpion shouldn't sting a stone. Waste of its sting. So I need to feel the pulse and the interest of the people as to actually, are they receptive? So again, it's a little bit like with Praful's question, consent of the people. Do they actually want to hear, and what do they want to hear? What is their need? Is it my need to just tell them stuff because I want to tell them stuff? That's my need. But actually, what's their need? To connect with them. Oh, what's happening in your life? Oh, have you thought about this? Then you can engage them and all of that. And in terms of balancing with professional people, I think it's important to keep a good relationship. When I was working, at first, because I would never go out to the work functions, and even they would then try and have like a lunch at work, and I wouldn't touch the food, and so it was creating a perception in their mind that I'm like isolating myself from them. And so I would make effort to do stuff like I would bake in the retreat center and make bread or biscuits and bring it into the office, and then they're like, oh, they're so happy, like they're eating this food and enjoying that, and they feel that he's got some connection. So sometimes it requires more effort on our part to go out and connect with them, but it maintains a good relationship. It's so important to maintain a good relationship with our work colleagues, right? It's the easiest service for Baba, easy service. And also, it helps professionally, because if people love you at work, it's so much easier, right? Especially your managers and stuff. We're learning to share virtues as BKs. I found that if I would share the good qualities of my managers, senior people, they would want me to go ahead. They're like, oh, this guy's great. He's like saying so many nice things about me. So we can speak knowledge in that way as well. Oh, wow, you've got so much of this particular virtue. And then they feel really happy that, okay, they're seeing good qualities in me. This is also simple service. Sheetal Didi is here. I think we're at the next stage. Oh no, we're finished. We're over time anyway. Oh.
Om Shanti. Thank you very much, Brother Dan, for guiding as per your experiences in this spiritual journey. He is a working professional as well as BK and Kumar, and so many experiences he has, and he must have shared all the experiences, how he tackled the problems which he faced in his professional life or in personal life. So thank you so much for your time. I don't know much about Brother Dan because I'm seeing him second time here. Morning I met for 5 minutes and now I'm seeing here. But the way I'm seeing, the whole team is with him, how he is working. चलो अभी हम हिंदी में बात कर सकते हैं. Oh, maybe you will not understand. You understand Hindi? No. Okay, but the way the whole team is working with him, I am seeing the Dhati Ben, Praful Bhai, Rucha Ben, Mitali Ben, and all this whole team. I mean, I just feel like they are together since long. I know Dharti already knows and Nikki already knows, but the other people are also. So it seems he is a very friendly person, double light soul. And I heard many short like how he behaves in Australia and what all things he do. I don't know much about it, but overall what I noticed is a very light soul, because this is what our spiritual journey is all about, and gets gel with everyone very easily. So thanks for being here in Jagdamba Bhavan. We are really blessed to have you here. And tomorrow morning brother is leaving, so we thought why not to welcome him officially in Jagdamba Bhavan. So I would like Brother Dan to sit in front of the chair. और साथ साथ हमारे मधुबन की पावन भूमि से हमारे अति सीनियर भाई जी कहेंगे, जो मीरा सोसाइटी सब जोन से समर्पित है, कई सालों से पांडव भवन में स्टोर और सब्जी डिपार्टमेंट में सेवाएं देते हैं. मैं तो समझती हूँ 25-30 साल से भी अधिक समर्पित रूप से अपनी सेवाएं दे रहे हैं. ऐसे हमारे आदरणीय प्रकाश भाई जी को भी मैं निमंत्रित करती हूँ मंच पर. भाई जी चुपके से आए हैं और चुपके से पीछे बैठे हैं, लेकिन भगवान की नज़र से और उसके बच्चों की नज़रों से कोई छूटता नहीं है. तो हम भी उनका जगदम्बा भवन में एक बार वेलकम करना चाहेंगे. तो करतल ध्वनि से हम दोनों को मंच पर निमंत्रित करते हैं. और मैं बहनों से निवेदन करती हूँ, और साथ साथ प्रफुल्ल भाई और गणेश भाई आप आएंगे आगे और हमारे अतिथियों को सम्मानित करेंगे पगड़ी द्वारा, जिसको पुनेरी पगड़ी कहो या हमारी ट्रेडिशनल पगड़ी कहो, और साथ साथ शॉल से. और हमारे मेघराज भाई भी आएंगे पहनाने के लिए. 3 चीज़ें हैं तो 3 भाई पहनाएंगे. आइए मेघराज भाई, आप टेप के पास हैं. पहले शॉल म्यूजिक भी थोड़ा हल्का चलता रहे और साथ में माइक भी चलता रहे. तो वैसे आज इंटरनेशनल योग है 6:30 से 7:30. तो मैं चाहूँगी कि हमारे प्रकाश भाई शॉर्ट में अपना परिचय और एक 5 मिनट अपनी कुछ बातें हमारे सम्मुख रखें, और उसके बाद ब्रदर डैन विल ऑल्सो शेयर फ्यू थिंग्स, पर्सनल थिंग्स of about your Brahmin life in 5 minutes, and then afterwards we will have tea, and then 6:30 to 7:30 powerful Numasham Yoga.
अच्छा लग रहा है. नहीं हिलता है, अभी ठीक है. हिल रहा था. ओम शांति. देखो, मैं बोलता हूँ सबसे भाग्यशाली मैं हूँ. ऐसा क्यों? क्योंकि एक खेड़े गांव से कुमार आपके सामने खड़ा है, ये नहीं मधुबन निवासी है, और वो भी बिना पढ़ा लिखा. समझ में आया? परंतु जिसकी लगन होती है ना, उसको कोई नहीं रोक सकता, कितनी भी आंधी तूफान आ जाए. बाबा उसकी पूरी मदद करता है, व्यक्ति करे न करे. इसलिए बाबा जो वर्तमान समय पर सुनाता है, उसके ऊपर पूरा ध्यान रखना चाहिए.
क्योंकि हम कोई वैराग्य देने के लिए कोई अच्छा क्लास करे, कोई ऐसी बातें सुनाए कि पुरुषार्थ करने के लिए दिल लग जाए, ये हम लोग ढकल गाड़ी जैसे सोचते हैं। तो हम लोग ये सोचें कि वर्तमान समय जे बाबा की मुरलियाँ चल रही है उसके ऊपर हम अभ्यास करते हैं, तो वो अनुभव करते हैं प्रैक्टिकल। बाबा ने वर्तमान समय पर क्या क्या सुनाया था, अव्यक्त बाप दादा ने, तो उसके ऊपर ध्यान रहता है तो अपने आप वैराग्य आता है, अपने आप पुरुषार्थ करने के लिए दिल लगता है। क्योंकि बाबा ने बोला था आगे आने वाला समय जो है बहुत नाजुक आएगा, और वो नाजुक समय आपको उस टाइम पुरुषार्थ करता हूँ, बैठो क्यों ये करता हूँ, उस समय वो भाना नहीं चलेगा। इसलिए बाबा ने बोला था बहुत काल का अभ्यास और दुआओं का स्टॉक, ये जब जमा हो तो ऑटोमेटिक आपकी परिस्थिति साफ होती जाएगी। जैसे आगे जाएंगे वैसे आगे आगे परिस्थिति भी साफ होती जाएगी, रास्ता देगी। तो हम ऐसा पुरुषार्थ करें कि आगे क्या आने वाला है वो दृश्य हमारे सामने हो जाए। इसलिए बाबा ने बोला था कि जे भी अष्ट शक्ति है इस समय पर हमको पूरा पूरा अनुभव करना है कि वहाँ 5 इंद्रिय है तो हमारे जो बोला जाता है वो पूर्ण हमारे कंट्रोल में है, तो उसको हमारे संकल्प समझो कि वहाँ अधिकार के आधार से हम चलाते हैं कि हम ऐसे ही चलते हैं कि हमारे सवेरे से लेके दिनचर्या जी बनी है उसके ऊपर हम परमानेंट चलते हैं। का एक दिन अलबेला, एक दिन अमृत बेला, एक दिन मुरली, क्योंकि हम अपने नियम पर परमानेंट चलते हैं। तो ये याद रखो कोई समस्या कि वहाँ कोई व्यक्ति भी नहीं रुका सकता है, कोई 5 तत्व का कोई भी ये रुका सकता है। जैसे आज बोला जाता है कोरोना वायरस में किस आज तक बहाने आते थे, हमको जिम्मेवारी है, हमारे को इतने काम धंधा होता है, इसके अलावा हम यथाशक्ति से पुरुषार्थ करते हैं, परंतु कोरोना वायरस में हम पूरे खाली थे। तो हमने क्या पुरुषार्थ किया, और उसके पहले बाबा ने बोला था बच्चे आगे जाकर घर की खिड़की भी नहीं खोल पाओगे। चलो अभी दरवाज़ा खोलने के लिए छुट्टी नहीं थी, खिड़की तो खोल पा रहे थे, पर भविष्य कैसा आने वाला है, कैसी परिस्थिति होगी, कभी इसके ऊपर विचार करते हैं। मैं एक छोटा सा अनुभव सुनाता हूँ। मेरे घर में 10 बाय 10 का संपूर्ण देवारा भरा है कमरे से, परंतु महाराष्ट्र में हर महीने में कोई ना कोई त्यौहार होता है। तो खेती बाड़ी करने वालों को टाइम कहाँ होता है कि उसको भोग लगाओ। सवेरे किया तो किया, नहीं तो दोपहर को कौन भोग लगाने के लिए जाएगा। माँ को बोलते थे भोजन खिलाओ, तो माँ बोलती उसको भोग लगाओ पहले और फिर भोजन करो। उसको क्या काम पड़ा है बोलते था मैं, उसको बाद में खिला देना, मेरे को पहले खिला दो। तो उस कभी सुनेगा नहीं, इसलिए माँ क्या करती थी थाली में निकाल कर उसको रखती थी और मेरे को खिला लेती थी। परंतु ये था अज्ञानी काल का समय, परंतु अज्ञानी काल में ये सोचता था, वो माँ के सामने ऐसा बोला, परंतु भगवान जब इधर मिला मैं क्या करूँगा। बाबा बोलता है भक्ति मार्ग में अनेक वचन दिया है, ऐसा मोड़ कर भी नहीं देखूंगा पीछे, यहाँ से काट कर मांगा तो देने के लिए तैयार हूँ। तो ज्ञान में आने के बाद भगवान मिला, परंतु बलिहार जाएंगे, बलिहार जाने के लिए क्या करना पड़ता है, कैसा चलना पड़ता है, इसका कुछ भी नॉलेज नहीं। घर से ज़्यादा नहीं 13-14 किलोमीटर सेंटर है, कैसा जाना और कैसा आना ये भी नहीं मालूम। आगे कैसा बलिहार कैसा जाना होता है इसका नॉलेज ही नहीं है। परंतु जैसा जैसा मुरली रास्ता दिखाती है वैसी वैसी लगन बढ़ती जाए। तो मेरे को मधुबन में रखने के लिए ना मैं बोलता हूँ बेंची है ना मधुबन निवासी है, अपनी विशेषता के आधार से पहुँच गया हूँ। परंतु वहाँ जाने के बाद पुरुषार्थ पूरा हो गया? नो, ऐसा लक्ष्य रखो कि कितना भी तूफान आए, घर के कोई ज्ञान में नहीं चलते। घर के लोग क्रूर है, मैं बोलता हूँ, इतने क्रूर के घर के लोग गालियाँ देने के लिए सेंटर पर पहुँच रहे हैं। प्रकाश क्यों नहीं वापस आता है? तो हम पीछे आएंगे कि आगे जाएंगे? तो ये याद रखो, वैराग्य आने के लिए कोई इंसान का सहारा नहीं चाहिए, उसका एक सहारा मिला है। इसलिए मैं बुद्धि में एक ही रखता हूँ, संत ज्ञानेश्वर संत बनने के लिए इतना पुरुषार्थ किया, इतने लोगों का उसने सामना किया, तो हम तो मनुष्य से देवता बनते हैं। तो हमको क्या करना पड़ेगा? कितना पुरुषार्थ करना पड़ेगा? कितने लोगों को सामना करना पड़ेगा? तो इसलिए उस टाइम तो 8 दिन तक 10 पैसे का मुरमुरा खाकर दिन निकालते थे हम, परंतु ब्राह्मण परिवार को किसी को मालूम नहीं करवाते था। क्यों ऐसा? क्योंकि कोई भी माता भावने वाली होती, हाथ पकड़कर भोजन के लिए ले जाती थी। तो पेपर से भाग रहा है, फ्री में खाने के लिए मिलता है, उधर भाग रहा है मन, खुद को पेपर खुद देना है। तो सफलता मिलेगी नहीं मिलेगी? बाबा से मिला भी नहीं था तब, परंतु बाबा ने मधुबन का संपूर्ण साक्षात्कार कराया था। मधुबन कैसा है? ब्रह्मा बाबा की कर्म भूमि समझो, वरदानी भूमि समझो, तपस्या भूमि समझो। ऐसे संदली पर बैठ कर सुनाया क्लास में। तो निमित्त गीता पाठ से टीचर जो है, वो टीचर बोलता है आपने मधुबन तो देख लिया, परंतु परमात्मा साकार में संगम पर ही आता है और उसको मिलना जरूरी है। तो कैसे मिला जाए? थोड़ा सा पानी देंगे क्या? पूरा होठ सूख रहा है, पूरा सूख। तो देखो कैसा पुरुषार्थ होना चाहिए। हम 5 कुमार गीता पाठ से चलते थे, तो 5 कुमार ऐसे पुरुषार्थ थे, शाम को 6 बजे गीता पाठ में आए तो सवेरे 6 बजे जाना है। मम्मा का उदाहरण दिया जाता है, ऐसा कोर्ट कचहरी लगा देती थी, तो हम प्रैक्टिकल करके निकले हैं। 5 कुमार थे, पढ़े लिखे थे, और एक ही अनाड़ी था। तो ये ईर्ष्या चलती थी कि सबसे अच्छा किसका चार्ट रहेगा, क्योंकि उससे दूसरे दिन अच्छा कैसा रहे। तो ऐसे ऐसे अनुभव होता था। पहली बार बाबा से मिलने के लिए गया था, बाबा ने वरदान दिया था सामने से, व्यक्त बाप दादा ने, कालों का काल बाप है, आपका बाल भी टेढ़ा नहीं होगा तब, कंबाइंड रूप में रहोगे तब। तो ऐसा वरदान मिलता है तो कैसा चलना पड़ेगा। बाबा 90 के आसपास मुरलिया चलाता था विनाश पर। देखो समय समय पर बाबा ने जो इशारे देता है उसके ऊपर पुरुषार्थ करेंगे तो बाबा तो उसका अनुभव कराता है। ऐसा नहीं समझो बाबा साथ में नहीं है। बाबा को बोलता था कैसा बाप है तुम? बाप होता है बच्चों पर प्यार करने का, प्यार बरसाने के लिए होता है, डराने के लिए होता है। हर घड़ी विनाश 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 करता है। अनेक दिन विनाश दिखाया, उसमें ज़ोर ज़ोर से रोना चालू हो गया। तो वो साक्षी होकर देखने की भी ताकत नहीं है। तो हमारे पास हर समय हर चीज़ का नॉलेज, हर चीज़ का जिस समस्या है, जी परिस्थिति है, उसका पूरा सामना करने की ताकत होना चाहिए, और वो नहीं है तो हमने ऐसे ही समय गवाया। वो संत ज्ञानेश्वर खाली पुराना पढ़कर भक्ति संत बन सकता है। हमारे पास तो इतना बड़ा गाइड है, विश्व में ऐसा कोई गाइड नहीं है। तो हम सुना न सुना करते हैं तो हमारे पर क्या बीतेगी आगे वाला समय आया तो उस टाइम योग नहीं कर पाएंगे। इसलिए अभी एक भविष्यवाणी देख रहा था, अभी बोलते थे हवा में कोरोना आया, कल पानी में कोई बीमारी आएगी तो क्या करोगे, कैसा जियोगे। तो इसलिए कि बाबा ने बोला था कि बासी रोटी भी हो मुंह में गई तो पानी होना चाहिए। ऐसे ऐसे महावाक्य याद करो तो उसके लिए क्या पुरुषार्थ करना पड़ेगा, चबाना पड़ेगा का मुंह में लेने का अपने आप पानी होगा। पुरुषार्थ तो अपने आप करना है। तो इसलिए ऐसा लक्ष्य रखो कि वर्तमान समय जो भी संकल्प करो, संकल्प सिद्ध प्रूफ बन जाओ, क्योंकि नेगेटिव की जगह नहीं है। नेगेटिव संकल्प किया मना दूसरे के लिए शाप है, वो ब्रह्मास्त्र है वो। इसलिए हम बाल ब्रह्मचारी भी है तो मन की एकाग्रता है तो हमारी संकल्प बहुत कीमती होना है। इसलिए प्रकृति को भी दान दो, क्योंकि प्रकृति बाबा बोलता है एक दिन दासी बनेगी। तो कैसी दासी बनेगी, कुछ को कुछ नहीं दोगे तो दासी कैसी बनेगी। तो इसलिए हमको बहुत कुछ करना है, परंतु ये लक्ष्य रखो कि हमने आज तक दूसरों को देखते कि और दूसरों को फॉलो करते हैं। नो, उसके लिए समय नहीं। कॉलेज में आप लोग जाते हो, हम तो गए नहीं, किसको फॉलो करते हैं। ये विद्यालय हमारा बाबा बोलता है खुद को खुद देखो। तो हम कब तक ऐसा दूसरे के सहारे पर चलेंगे। बाबा मुरली चलाते, हम लोग दादी से प्रश्न करते थे, दादी मधुबन कैसा चलाते हो। मधुबन की परिस्थिति सब कुछ, मधुबन वाले हर डिपार्टमेंट की फैसिलिटी मांगते हैं, धन की कमी, बहनों की कोई कंप्लेंट, गवर्नमेंट की कोई कंप्लेंट, बाबा का ऊपर का आदेश, कैसा संभालते हो। तो दादी बोलती थी मैं कुछ नहीं संभालती थी, मेरे यथाशक्ति से मैं जितना हो सकता है उत्तर देती हूँ। एक बार छोड़कर मैं कम से कम 5 से 6 बार मुरली पढ़ती हूँ। और बाबा को बोलती हूँ ये तुम जाने, तुम्हारा यज्ञ जाने, मेरे को कोई लेना देना नहीं, मैं जा रही हूँ सोने के लिए। इतनी न्यूट्रल रहती थी कि 3 मिनट के अंदर ऐसे बात करते करते सो जा रही है। ऐसा नहीं समझो कि हम लोग ही जिम्मेवारी संभाल रहे हैं, हमारे सामने अनेक एग्जाम्पल है। तो इसलिए हम एग्जाम्पल योग्य है तो हमारे सामने, तो हमको क्या परवाह है, किसको दिखाना है। हमारी पढ़ाई गुप्त है, हम गुप्त है, बाप गुप्त है, संगम युग गुप्त है। तो हमको दिखानी जरूर नहीं, जो समय आएगा प्रत्यक्ष का वो अपने आप हो जाएगा। इसलिए मैं कभी कभी क्लास में उदाहरण देता हूँ कि बाबा ने कुछ साल पहले बोला था कि बाबा ने बोला था कि माउंट से लेके बॉम्बे तक लाइन लगेगी। किसकी लाइन लगेगी, किसकी लाइन लगेगी बोलो। अज्ञानी लोगों की लगेगी, ब्राह्मण लोगों की लगेगी, किसकी लाइन लगेगी। देखो कितना विचार सागर मंथन करते हो आप लोग। बाबा ने ये भी बोला था एक आँख में मुक्ति और एक आँख में जीवन मुक्ति। आपका 1 सेकंड की दृष्टि, उस आत्मा को 1 सेकंड का दृष्टि में उसकी मनोकामना पूर्ण करोगे। आप दोगे, बाप नहीं देगा, माध्यम आप होंगे समय पर। तो हम कितना पुरुषार्थ करना चाहिए, कितना जमा चाहिए। पावर हाउस बनना अपने को है, दूसरों को नहीं। इसलिए पावर हाउस बनने के लिए उसी प्रकार का ज्ञान योग होना चाहिए। ठीक है, ओम शांति।
Thank you. Hello.
I enjoyed listening to our brother. It was very sweet how you can feel that Madhavan vibes. It's been nice. I got to meet everyone already anyway and share, so very happy. Om Shanti.
विभिन्न भाषाओं में ये सब गीत गॉडलीवुड स्टूडियो में निर्माण हुए हैं।
Om Shanti. There is a small announcement before we move on for break and then Numasham Yog. We have a conference for the next Sunday at Jagdamba Bhavan from 10:30 until 4:30. It's a full day conference, especially for the lawyers, the judges, the chartered accountants, those into the field of accountancy, taxation, people working in banks and or insurance companies. So all these type of people who are in the field of accountancy or legal professions, especially the lawyers and CAs, you can invite them for this conference. This is a very unique conference. We are having first of its kind in Pune, and that too in Jagdamba Bhavan. And the title is very nice, My Role in Changing the World Through Kindness and Compassion, because these two values are needed in legal profession. So we have these folders, 4 pages folders at the office or at the reception. So before going, you can take as many folders you feel you can invite your lawyers into contact. We have a very good array of guests coming. We have Dr. Ishwar Iyer, who is a High Court judge. Then we have Pune Bar Association's chairman coming. Also Indian Council Chartered Accountant Secretary. He would be coming, Direct Access Chairman, he would be coming. We have our own Lalit Bhai coming from Madhuban and many others on the list. So make sure that you take this folder and serve it, give it to your contact souls so that they can take benefits from this session. Om Shanti.
रिसेप्शन पे चाय है, जो भी नुमाशाम होने वाले हैं या चाय लेकर जाने वाले जैसे भी।
So sister is requesting everybody to wait for the Numasham Yog, but in case if you're not waiting or either you're waiting, please have the tea which is kept at the reception.